Hi guys, Tommymaze again. Over the last several weeks I've seen a lot of content on YouTube, Reddit, Discord, and other forum postings. There is a large amount of frustration over layering from the actual vanilla community, with a small number of retail subscribers who defend it on the WoW forums. Their game is literally so dead and so boring that they take the time out of their day to give their worthless opinions on classic forums. In this video I want to address the main argument they spew out of their friendless sharded heads: tourists. A tourist, by their definition, is someone who will try out the game on launch and then quit after a few days or weeks because they realize the game isn't for them. The purpose of layering is a way for Blizzard to have a smooth launch while making sure that the server population doesn't die after a month. This idea is based on their own analytics from their recent expansions, which show that they get a large surge whenever a game launches, followed by a sharp drop-off. These 1 to 2 month joyriders are considered tourists, but they are forgetting a critical piece of their own history, which is, I believe, the tourist argument is actually a reason not to have layering. On November 23rd, 2004, World of Warcraft launched for the first time. Their numbers were relatively modest, and you can see by the graph. 1 million subscribers, the same as people estimate where Battle for Azeroth is at now, and that is with being able to purchase game time for gold. After several months of vanilla WoW being out, we see a huge climb in subscriber count, which came mostly just by word of mouth. By the start of 2005, we see a large jump to around 4 million subscribers, which is a large jump considering it hadn't even been out a year. By 2006, that number was closer to 7 million and still rising. Keep in mind that gaming was a very different thing back then. If you identified as a gamer, you were considered a loser at school, with the exception of maybe a few shooter games like Halo or Counter-Strike. Gaming was much less mainstream and advertising budgets was much smaller then. Yet World of Warcraft just kept on growing. Another thing to note is that the game was actually more expensive back then because of inflation. The buying power of $15 a month then is equal to about 20 to 21 today. On January 16, 2007, Blizzard released its expansion pack, The Burning Crusade. The surge of people joining the game at this time is still much higher than they are leaving. As Burning Crusade starts in Q1 of 2007, we see the sub count at a little over 8 million, and just in the duration of TBC we see that number rise to about 11 to 12 million subscribers. During this time, something happened on the corporate side, though. On July 9, 2008, Activision merged with Vivendi Games, culminating in the inclusion of Blizzard in that merge. This is, from my understanding, is where Activision started to make their changes, but also from my personal belief that the game took a turn for the worst, as many of the older gamers who played during Vanilla and TBC basically disliked the game enough to actually quit. There were several blunders from that game on a mechanical or rating side, as well as new technology for servers that I feel added to this, but I'll talk about that a little later. I feel this was the zenith at about 12.5 million subscribers, which is a giant accomplishment in the gaming industry. Growth started to stagnate during Wrath. Players were leaving almost as fast as new players were coming in, despite Blizzard's advertising budget being massively higher than ever before. This number gained a little bit during Icecrown Citadel, mostly from piggybacking off some of the most memorable lore from Warcraft 3. Old players also came back to give Cataclysm a chance in hopes that Blizzard was fixing the game they had started to ruin. But that was short-lived. I feel it worth mentioning that during that time of Wrath of the Lich King and Kata, it was the new technology starting to be implemented, like phasing, which ended up leading to sharding. Basically, when you finished a quest, a new stage would be there. This served to isolate different people from the different stages of completion, as you can't help a friend on a quest or do anything with them if they aren't as far along as you are. You can't even see them in the game, but they show up on the map. I do remember this as wildly unpopular even back then. As the population declined, they had to take aggressive steps to make people feel like it was still a populated game. This included a lot of server merges and battlegroup merges, and the advent of more sharding, which you could be running across the continent and you'd see somebody from a completely different server than you. On September 25, 2012, Mists of Pandaria launched, and there was a build-up in subscribers to 10 million again. This begins a trend that we see in the new expansions thereafter, Warlords and Legion, where the population rises back to 10 million. Now the analytics that Blizzard is using is leaving out a highly critical piece of information. All of these people returning, the tourists, are old vanilla TBC Wild Oak players that are hoping that Blizzard have changed and brought the game back to something they enjoyed. We are the people who keep giving Blizzard the chance to fix the game, to state that. I believe that this tourists are actually the people who love the old and vastly superior versions of the game, and that Blizzard is mistaken if they think the classic WoW and TBC won't keep growing. On February 28, 2015, just 3 months after Warlords of Draenor released, a server by the name of Nostalrius launched. during a gaming drought, and it was a poor attempt at making a Blizz-like vanilla server. That being said, when it first came out, it still grew at a similar rate as the original game back in 2004, without any advertising. I wonder what their growth would be without a C&D letter. Gaming has grown massively since 2008, and many of these people who talk about tourists say that things like players will go back to playing something else. Really? Like, what exactly? There hasn't been a real MMO or even a good game released in the last 8 years, or even a new game for that matter. Where are they going to go? Back to Dota 2? Dota was out when Vanilla was. Counter-Strike? That was out during Vanilla 2. Call of Duty Modern Warfare? I mean, they are literally using the exact same name from 2007. All of the games are the same, but gaming is much bigger now. I don't expect Classic to steal a bunch of players from games like Fortnite and League of Legends, but it will take some. There are certain types of people who are just hooked after the starting zone. With how boring things are right now, there are plenty of people who will see Classic getting a bunch of views on Twitch and try it out, and guess what? It will be the first time they've ever played an actual good game. And they will tell their friends to come and try it, just like it was back in 2004. Except back then, we had almost nothing but good games, and Vanilla quickly still became everyone's favorite main game. That is just how good it is. If my theory is correct, Blizzard is creating a massive problem for themselves by adding layering. If the game keeps growing after it comes out as I expect it will, they will not be able to remove it. One of the only ways I could see Vanilla or TBC not growing over time is from Activision Blizzard trying to make changes to the game and that don't follow the design and philosophy of the original creators, like layering. I think Blizzard might be creating their own self-fulfilling prophecy by trying to fix a problem that likely doesn't exist. They are creating a version of Classic that might actually get people to quit. We, the actual vanilla community, might end up being the tourists after we get fed up with them not being able to keep their promises of removing layering. In the case that tourists are actually a problem, I'd rather solve it by having more servers without layering on the launch, with the intention of merging servers based on faction populations very early on. If layering is absolutely required, it should have a lifespan leading from the first 2 uncontested zones, and then being removed in all contested zones after that. It will affect gameplay, after which I feel will subtract to the long-term health of the game. Ultimately, I feel that we all want the same thing for Classic to do well, both the community and Blizzard itself, because we only get one shot at this. If you agree with what I'm saying in this video, please give me a like and a comment. If you don't like this video, feel free to hit that dislike button and tell me why. Thanks for watching.